Let me ask you a question tonight. What if the restlessness you feel is not confusion, but a command? What if the discomfort you've been praying away is actually God trying to move you forward? Some of you have been asking God for peace, but God has been asking you for courage. And tonight, heaven has an announcement for your life. Pack your bag. It's time. There comes a moment in every destiny when God does not explain, God instructs. Not everything God tells you will make sense. Not every season comes with details. Sometimes God doesn't give a map. God gives a push. You thought the shaking meant you were losing something, but God says, I'm relocating you. You thought the door closed to punish you, but God says, I closed it because you stayed too long. This is not about geography. This is not about luggage. This is about movement. This is about obedience. This is about trusting the voice of God over the comfort of familiarity. And if you can hear this message, it means God is not done with you. God is repositioning you. So tonight I came to tell somebody, God said, pack your bag. It's time. Let me tell you something most people don't realize until they look back on their lives. God rarely speaks first through comfort. God speaks through tension. God speaks through that uneasy feeling you can't explain. God speaks through the moment when everything looks fine on the outside, but inside you feel stuck, restless, irritated, and unsatisfied. You wake up in the same bed, follow the same routine, go to the same job, talk to the same people, and yet something inside you keeps whispering, there has to be more than this. You try to ignore it. You distract yourself. You call it stress, burnout, or boredom. But what if it's not any of those things? What if that discomfort is not a problem to escape, but a signal from God? Think about daily life. When you sit too long in one position, your body starts to ache, not because the chair hates you, but because your body is designed to move. Pain becomes a message. Shift. Discomfort becomes information. In the same way, when God wants to move you, God doesn't always send fireworks or signs in the sky. Sometimes God sends unease, a holy dissatisfaction, a sense that the place you're in no longer fits who you're becoming. You used to tolerate things that now drain you. Conversations that once felt normal now feel heavy. Environments that once energized you now exhaust you. And you keep asking, why am I so irritated lately? God says, because you're still sitting in a season I already told you to stand up from. Discomfort is not God abandoning you. It is God activating you. Look at how we live. Your phone battery starts overheating, it's a warning. If your car dashboard lights up, it's not punishment, it's protection. Ignoring the signal doesn't make the issue go away, it makes it worse. In the same way, ignoring spiritual discomfort doesn't bring peace. It delays progress. Some of you have been praying for peace while God has been trying to provoke movement. You want calm, but God wants courage. You want stability, but God wants growth. And growth always begins with tension. You stayed because it was familiar. You stayed because it was safe. You stayed because at one time it worked. But seasons expire. And when a season ends, comfort becomes captivity. What once sheltered you can start to suffocate you. That frustration you feel at work. It's not laziness. It's misalignment. That dissatisfaction in certain relationships, it's not arrogance. It's awareness. That inner voice saying, I can't do this forever. That's not fear talking, that's God signaling transition. God will often disturb your comfort before God delivers your breakthrough. Because if God made the next level too comfortable, you'd never leave the current one. So God lets the chair get uncomfortable. God lets the walls feel tight. God lets the routine feel heavy. So you'll finally ask, is it time to move? And here's the truth most people miss. Discomfort doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It often means something is right within you. It means you're growing. It means your spirit has outgrown the space you're in. It means God has deposited more inside you than your current situation can contain. When shoes are too small, your feet hurt. Not because your feet are bad, but because they've grown. When a room feels tight, it's not because the room shrank, it's because you expanded. God never wastes discomfort. God uses it to wake you up, to shake you loose, to remind you that you were not created to stay stagnant. Comfort zones feel good, but they don't build strength. They don't activate faith. They don't reveal purpose. That's why God allows disruption. That's why plans fall apart. That's why routines stop working. God is saying, I'm not trying to hurt you, I'm trying to move you. And the moment you stop fighting the discomfort, the moment you stop numbing it, the moment you stop calling it a problem, and start asking, what is God preparing me for? Everything changes. Discomfort is the knock on the door of your destiny. Ignore it and you stay where you are. Answer it and you step into who you're meant to become. So don't curse the tension. Don't fear the unease. Don't silence the restlessness. Lean into it. Listen to it. Because when God makes you uncomfortable, it's not rejection, it's direction. And if you feel uncomfortable right now, maybe it's not because you're failing. Maybe it's because God is saying, pack your bag. It's time. Most people think movement means uncertainty. They think stepping into something new means risking loss, confusion, or failure. But when God tells you to move, it is never random. God does not interrupt your life without intention. Every shift God allows is loaded with meaning, even when you don't understand it at the moment. In daily life, nothing important moves without a reason. When a farmer plants seeds, it's not for decoration, it's for harvest. When a teacher advances a student to the next grade, it's not to confuse them. It's because they've outgrown the current level. When a doctor changes a prescription, it's not to punish the patient, it's to heal them more effectively. Movement always follows purpose. And if God is asking you to pack your bag, it's because there is something ahead of you that cannot reach you where you are. Think about how life works. You don't leave home in the morning without knowing why. You don't travel without a destination in mind. Even when plans change, there's still intention behind the movement. In the same way, God never says go without already knowing where you're headed. You may not see the full picture, but God sees the entire route. Many people struggle because they believe God moves them away from something rather than towards something. But God is not focused on what you're losing. God is focused on what you're about to gain. What feels like an ending is often a setup. What feels like a detour is often the shortest path to growth. You might be leaving a job that paid the bills but drained your spirit. God is not removing income. God is repositioning influence. You might be stepping out of a relationship that once supported you but now limits you. God is not creating loneliness. God is making room for alignment. You might be leaving a place that felt familiar but kept you small. God is not uprooting you to harm you. God is transplanting you so you can grow. Look at how nature works. A seed doesn't complain when it's buried because burial is not destruction, it's preparation. The seed has to move from the hand into the soil to reach its potential. If it stayed in the packet, it would remain safe, but it would never become what it was designed to be. Purpose requires placement, and God is the only one who knows the correct environment for what's inside you. That's why God never moves you without provision already waiting. The door may close behind you, but another one is already open ahead of you, even if you can't see it yet. Provision doesn't always show up first. Sometimes movement activates it. Just like you don't see the next street until you turn the corner, clarity often appears after obedience. In everyday life, promotions don't come to people who refuse responsibility. Opportunities don't open for people who never show up. Growth doesn't happen for those who stay frozen in fear. Movement signals readiness. When you take a step, you're saying, I trust that something greater is ahead. And God responds to that trust. Some of you are afraid because you want guarantees before you move. But guarantees eliminate faith. God doesn't show you everything at once because if you saw the entire journey, you might rely on the plan instead of trusting the one who designed it. God reveals just enough to keep you moving and just enough to keep you dependent. You're not behind, you're not late, you're not lost. If God is nudging you forward, it means the next phase is already prepared. The move isn't about escape, it's about alignment. It's about being in the right place at the right time for the right reason. Think about moments in your past that didn't make sense then but make perfect sense now. The job you didn't get, the move you didn't want, the door that closed unexpectedly. At the time, it felt like rejection. Now you see it was redirection. God didn't block your path. God saved you from walking into something that couldn't sustain you. Purpose is always bigger than comfort. And when God moves you, it's because your life is about to expand in ways your current position cannot support. The blessing ahead needs space. The growth ahead needs exposure. The calling ahead needs courage. So when God says pack your bag, don't panic, don't overanalyze, don't assume loss, recognize intention, recognize design, recognize divine strategy at work. You're not moving into emptiness, you're moving into preparat. Ion, you're moving into placement, you're moving into purpose. And even if you don't know exactly where you're going yet, know this with certainty: God would not move you unless something meaningful was already waiting for you on the other side. One of the hardest lessons in life is understanding that waiting when God has already spoken is not patience, it's hesitation. We tell ourselves we're being careful, responsible, or wise, but deep down we know the truth. We heard the inner instruction. We felt the pull. We recognized the moment, and we paused because fear started negotiating with obedience. In daily life, hesitation always has consequences. When the traffic light turns green and the first car doesn't move, everything behind it gets delayed. Not because the road is blocked, but because someone hesitated at the signal. Life works the same way. When God gives you a green light and you don't move, momentum is lost. Not because God changed direction, but because timing matters. Think about opportunities you miss, not because you weren't capable, but because you waited too long. You thought about starting that business but kept saying next year. Someone else started it. You considered learning a new skill but told yourself you were too busy. Now you wish you had begun earlier. You felt the urge to speak up, to apply, to leave, to begin. But hesitation disguised itself as logic, and time quietly moved on. God doesn't shout instructions repeatedly. God speaks, then watches for response. Obedience is not about perfection, it's about movement. Delayed obedience slowly turns into comfort with staying where you are. And comfort has a dangerous way of convincing you that delay is harmless until you realize you've been standing still for years. Look at everyday examples. When a train arrives at the station, it doesn't wait forever. The doors open, there is a window, and then they close. If you hesitate too long, the train still leaves on schedule. The destination didn't change, the opportunity didn't disappear, but you're no longer on board. Not because you were rejected, but because you waited. Some people are tired not because they're doing too much, but because they're stuck between decision and action. That in-between space is exhausting. You keep replaying the same thoughts, weighing the same options, asking the same questions. Your body is still, but your mind is running nonstop. God never intended for you to live trapped in indecision. Clarity doesn't come from overthinking. It comes from obedience and motion. You don't need every detail before you move. In real life, you don't see the entire staircase. You see the next step. You don't wait for all the traffic lights to turn green. You move when the one in front of you does. Waiting for certainty before action is like refusing to swim until the water stops moving. Delayed obedience doesn't look rebellious. It looks reasonable. It says, I just need a little more time. I'm not ready yet. He'll do it when things calm down, but life doesn't calm down. Perfect timing rarely arrives. What arrives is now, and now is the moment God works with. Fear loves delay because delay keeps you safe from failure, but it also keeps you safe from growth. You avoid risk, but you also avoid reward. You avoid discomfort, but you also avoid transformation. Staying where you are feels secure, but it slowly teaches you to settle. Think about physical fitness. If you keep delaying exercise because you don't feel ready, your strength doesn't stay the same. It declines. Muscles weaken when unused. Momentum fades when ignored. In the same way, spiritual and personal strength grow only when acted upon. Obedience builds confidence. Delay feeds doubt. God doesn't ask for a lifetime commitment in one moment. God asks for a step. But that step has a time attached to it. When you miss the moment, you don't lose your value, but you do lose that season's opportunity. And seasons don't repeat themselves exactly the same way. Some of you are asking why things feel stuck. It's because your life is waiting on a decision you already know you need to make. You're waiting on a sign, but the sign already came. It just didn't look dramatic. It came as an inner knowing. a repeated thought, a persistent nudge you couldn't shake. Delayed obedience is like leaving a message on read and never replying. The instruction came through. The question is not whether God spoke. The question is whether you responded. The moment you move, momentum returns. Energy comes back, clarity sharpens, confidence grows. Not because everything becomes easy, but because alignment creates strength. So stop negotiating with fear. Stop postponing courage. Stop calling delay wisdom when it's really reluctance. If God stirred you, it's because the time is now, not later, not someday, not when you feel braver. Obedience doesn't wait for comfort. Obedience creates movement, and movement opens doors delay never will. If you're tired of standing still, maybe the answer isn't more waiting. Maybe the answer is simple. Move. Now, one of the greatest reasons people struggle when God tells them to move is not fear of the new, it's attachment to the old. God never says pack your bag without also meaning leave some things behind. And this is where many people get stuck. They want a new season with old habits, a bigger future with smaller thinking, growth without release. But life doesn't work that way. Think about daily life. When you travel, airlines don't negotiate with you. There's a weight limit. Not because they're cruel, but because the plane can't lift everything safely. If your bag is too heavy, you don't argue. You remove items. Not everything is bad. Not everything is wrong. Some things are just too heavy for where you're going. God works the same way. When God prepares you for the next level, God checks your load. Attitudes, routines, mindsets, relationships, behaviors. Some of them helped you survive the last season, but they will slow you down in the next one. And God loves you too much to let extra weight cause unnecessary turbulence. You keep asking God to take you higher, but elevation requires reduction. The higher you go, the lighter you must be. Climbers don't carry luxury items to the top of a mountain. They carry only what is essential. Everything else becomes a liability. And God is saying, if you want the height, you have to release the weight. Some of you are carrying habits that no longer serve who you're becoming. They were comfortable once, familiar, easy. But now they drain your energy and dull your vision. God isn't condemning you. God is refining you. There's a difference. Refinement isn't punishment. It's preparation. Others are carrying old mindsets. The way you think about yourself, the way you limit your own potential, the way you speak doubt over your future. Those thoughts didn't stop you from getting this far, but they will stop you from going further. You can't step into expansion while carrying small expectations. And then there are people. This is the hardest part. Not everyone who walked with you can walk where you're going. Not because they're bad, but because they're assigned to a different season. Some relationships were meant to support you, not define you, to walk with you for a chapter, not the whole story. Holding on too long turns appreciation into attachment, and attachment can become resistance in everyday life. Children, even to ally, outgrow their clothes. Parents don't get angry at the clothes. They don't shame the child. They simply acknowledge growth. Wearing what no longer fits restricts movement. It looks familiar, but it feels uncomfortable. That's how many people live, emotionally wearing what they've outgrown. God is saying, stop trying to make the old fit the new. The next season needs room. Room for growth, room for clarity, room for strength. If you're packed too tight with yesterday, there's no space for tomorrow. You don't bring winter coats into summer because they don't match the environment. In the same way, you can't carry survival habits into a season of stability. You can't carry defensive thinking into a season of trust. You can't carry scarcity mindset into abundance. What once protected you may now be holding you back. Letting go doesn't mean what you carried was wrong. It means its assignment is complete. God is not erasing your past. God is honoring it by saying, you don't need this anymore. Release is not loss, it's maturity. Many people delay obedience because they don't want to release control. They want to know exactly what stays and what goes. But packing requires trust. Trust that if God asks you to leave something behind, it's because it won't be needed where you're going, or because it will be replaced by something better. Look at how life upgrades work. When your phone updates, some old apps stop working, not because they were useless, but because the system has evolved. If you try to keep everything the same, the system crashes. Growth requires updates. Updates require letting go. Some of you are exhausted because you were carrying emotional baggage you were never meant to take forward. Old guilt, old regrets, old disappointments. God is saying, why are you packing pain I already healed? You don't need proof of past struggles to justify future success. You don't need scars to remind you of strength. You already survived. When God says pack your bag, God is also saying be intentional. Choose what serves your future, not what reminds you of your past. Choose faith over fear, growth over familiarity, purpose over people-pleasing. Travel light, not careless, intentional, not empty focus. The lighter you pack, the freer you move. The freer you move, the faster you respond. And the faster you respond, the clearer the journey becomes. If you're struggling to move forward, ask yourself honestly, what am I still carrying that God never asked me to bring? Because the next season isn't heavy, the resistance is in the baggage. One of the biggest myths people believe is that they must feel ready before they move. They think confidence comes first and action comes second. But life teaches us the opposite. Movement creates readiness. God does not wait for you to feel prepared. God waits for you to trust enough to step forward anyway. In daily life, no one ever feels fully ready for the moments that matter most. No one feels ready to ride a bike the first time without training wheels. No one feels ready on their first day at a new job. No one feels ready when they speak in front of people for the first time. Readiness doesn't arrive before the step. It arrives because of the step. Think about learning to swim. You can stand at the edge of the pool for hours, watching others move through the water. You can study techniques, ask questions, and imagine how it will feel. But until you actually get in the water, your body doesn't learn balance. Confidence doesn't come from watching. It comes from immersion. God knows this. That's why God doesn't wait for your emotions to align before giving instruction. Faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is moving with fear still present. If you wait until fear disappears, you will never move. Fear fades after motion begins, not before. Courage is not a feeling. It is a decision. Everyday life proves this. When you drive at night, your headlights don't light the entire road. They only show you a short distance ahead, yet that's enough to keep moving. If you waited for full visibility, you'd never reach your destination. God works the same way. God gives just enough clarity for the next step, not the whole journey. Trust fills the gap between what you see and where you're going. Some of you keep telling yourself, I'll move when I feel stronger. But strength is built through resistance. Muscles don't grow by waiting. They grow by being used. In the same way, spiritual and emotional, now strength come from action. Every step you take reinforces your belief that you can take another one. You might feel unqualified, but qualification comes through obedience. You might feel unsure, but certainty is developed through experience. You might feel small, but growth begins the moment you stop measuring yourself by your feelings and start measuring yourself by your faith. God does not call the fearless. God builds courage in the willing. Willingness says, I don't have all the answers, but I trust the voice guiding me. That trust is what transforms hesitation into movement. Look at daily responsibilities. Parents don't feel ready the moment they hold their child for the first time. Leaders don't feel ready when they step into responsibility. Teachers don't feel ready on their first day in front of a classroom. Yet growth happens because they step forward anyway. Responsibility shapes readiness. If you wait to feel perfect, you'll miss powerful moments meant to shape you. God is not waiting for perfection. God is waiting for participation. The process will teach you what preparation never could. Some of you are standing at the edge of change, telling yourself you need more confidence. But confidence doesn't fall from the sky. Confidence is built when you survive what you were once afraid of. Each step becomes evidence that you are capable. Each move becomes proof that God is with you. Waiting to feel ready often masks fear of failure. But failure is not the end. Stagnation is. Failure teaches, stagnation drains. You learn more from moving and stumbling than from standing still and imagining success. God knows you won't feel ready. That's why the instruction comes anyway. God is not trying to pressure you. God is trying to position you. If God waited for comfort, growth would never happen. When you take the step, something shifts. Your mind adjusts. Your strength activates. Your vision sharpens. What once felt impossible begins to feel manageable. Not because the situation changed, but because you changed. So stop asking yourself if you feel ready. Ask yourself if you trust God enough to move without feeling ready. That question changes everything. The step comes first. The strength follows. The confidence grows. And one day you'll look back and realize what you thought required readiness actually required faith in motion. There is a truth many people overlook. Clarity does not come before movement. It comes because of movement. People spend years asking for direction, waiting for certainty, praying for answers, hoping for a clear sign while standing completely still. But life does not reward hesitation with clarity. Life rewards commitment. Think about daily life. When you're using a GPS, it doesn't recalculate the route until you start driving. If you sit in your driveway waiting for every turn to be explained, the screen stays quiet. The system responds only after motion begins. In the same way, God often waits for willing before releasing instruction. Not because God is silent, but because movement signals readiness to listen. Many people say, if I just knew what to do, I would move. But God says, if you would move, I would show you what to do. Direction is not a gift for spectators. It is revealed to participants. Look at how clarity works in everyday decisions. You don't discover whether a job is right for you by imagining it. You discover it by showing up. You don't know if a new routine will change your life until you commit to it. You don't gain confidence by planning forever. You gain it by stepping in and adjusting along the way. Movement sharpens awareness. Stillness clouds it. Some of you feel confused not because you lack wisdom, but because you refuse to commit. You want assurance without action. But clarity grows louder once you demonstrate trust. When God sees you willing to step without full explanation, that willingness unlocks insight. Think about learning any skill. When someone starts learning to drive, everything feels overwhelming at first. The pedals, the mirrors, the traffic. But the more they drive, the clearer everything becomes. Their awareness sharpens because they are in motion. The same streets that once felt confusing eventually feel familiar. Movement turns noise into understanding. God works the same way. When you stay still, every option feels overwhelming. When you move, distractions fall away and focus emerges. Action simplifies decisions. Commitment narrows confusion. Some people delay movement because they fear making the wrong choice. But clarity doesn't come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from engagement. Even wrong turns teach you something. Even detours add understanding. Standing still teaches you nothing except how to doubt yourself. When God sees movement, God responds with guidance. Not all at once, not loudly, but clearly enough for the next step, the next conversation, the next opportunity, the next confirmation. Direction unfolds in layers, not all at once. Everyday life confirms this. When you walk into a dark room, the light switch doesn't reveal itself until you take a few steps forward. If you stay frozen at the door, the room stays dark. But once you move, what you need appears within reach. God places answers along the path, not at the starting line. Some of you are frustrated because you want the full plan. But God wants partnership, not spectatorship. God reveals direction to those who demonstrate trust through action. Movement is language. It says, I'm listening. And God responds to those who listen with their feet, not just their thoughts. You don't need loud instructions. You need obedience in motion. Once you move, sensitivity increases. You start noticing signs you missed before. You hear wisdom more clearly. You feel peace in certain directions and resistance in others. That discernment doesn't come from waiting. It comes from walking. Think about conversations you don't understand somehow fully until you engage with them. Silence creates assumptions. Dialogue creates clarity. Movement is your dialogue with God. Each step says, guide me, and guidance comes. Some people confuse waiting with wisdom. But there is a difference between patience and paralysis. Patience moves when the time comes. Paralysis waits forever for perfect conditions. God does not reward paralysis with revelation. When you finally commit, really commit, things begin to align, not because everything becomes easy, but because your focus sharpens. Confusion loses power when commitment enters the room. Fear quiets when action begins. Doubt shrinks when momentum grows. God speaks loudest to those already moving because movement proves trust, and trust invites clarity. So if you feel unsure, don't retreat. Advance carefully. Take the step you can take. Make the call. Start the process. Apply. Begin. Show up. Movement doesn't require confidence, it creates it. The voice becomes clearer once your feet are already moving. The path becomes visible once you commit to walking it, and the direction you seek reveals itself along the way, not before. If you want clarity, don't wait for it, move toward it. One of the most challenging parts of moving forward is not the unknown ahead, it's the familiar behind you calling your name. The past has a voice. It knows your habits, it knows your weaknesses, it knows what makes you hesitate. And when God tells you to move, the old season doesn't stay silent, it tries to sound reasonable. In daily life, familiarity is powerful. Think about an old couch that's worn out and uncomfortable. You know it's not good for your back anymore, but you still sit on it because it's familiar. It remembers your shape. You know where the springs are broken. A new couch might be better, but it feels strange at first. So you're tempted to return to what you know, even if it hurts you. The past works the same way. Old routines, old environments, old relationships, old ways of thinking. They feel safe because they're known. And when you step forward, they start whispering, at least you were comfortable here. At least you knew what to expect. Why risk starting over? But comfort is not always care. Sometimes comfort is a cage with soft walls. Think about someone who leaves a job that drained them. The first few weeks feel uncertain. Bills still exist. Structure changes. And suddenly the old job doesn't seem so bad anymore. At least it was predictable. The past has a way of editing itself, highlighting the good and hiding the costs. It forgets the exhaustion. It forgets the stress. It forgets the ceiling that kept you from growing. That's why looking back is dangerous. Not because the past was all bad, but because it no longer fits who you are becoming. When you keep turning around, you slow your progress. When you keep revisiting old places emotionally, you divide your focus. Forward movement requires forward vision. In daily life, you can't drive safely if you keep staring in the rearview mirror. The mirror is useful, but it's smaller than the windshield for a reason. It's meant for awareness, not direction. When you let the past steer you, you crash into the future. Some people keep answering calls they should have silenced. Old habits calling when you feel stressed. Old relationships calling when you feel lonely. Old thought patterns calling when you feel unsure. The past doesn't call because it has something new to offer. It calls because it recognizes change and wants to reclaim control. The past is familiar, but familiarity is not destiny. God doesn't pull you forward just to test you. God pulls you forward because there is growth ahead that the old season cannot support. But the old season will try to convince you that staying put is wisdom. It will dress fear up as logic. It will label retreat as being realistic. Think about someone trying to get healthy. The first week of change feels uncomfortable. Your body craves sugar, your muscles ache, and suddenly your old habits start calling louder than ever. Not because they're good, but because they're used to being obeyed. Resistance doesn't mean the change is wrong. It means the old pattern is losing power. The same is true when God moves you forward. The moment you commit, the old life gets loud. Old thoughts show up. Old temptations resurface. Old voices reappear, not because you're weak, but because you're transitioning. Some people return to the past not because they want it, but because they're afraid of the silence that comes before the new season fully forms. The unknown feels empty at first. The old season at least feels full, even if it's full of limitations. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is preparation. You cannot walk forward while constantly checking if the old door is still open. At some point, you have to trust that what's ahead is worth leaving what's behind. God does not call you forward to tease you. God calls you forward to transform you. The past will remind you of who you were. God is focused on who you are becoming. Some people say, I'll just visit the old place once more. But revisiting often reawakens attachments you worked hard to release. Healing requires boundaries. Growth requires distance. You don't keep old blueprints when you're building a new structure. Think about graduation. You don't go back to sit in elementary school because it was simpler. You honor it, but you don't return to it. The skills that helped you then are not enough now. Growth demands progression. God is not offended by your past, but God will not let it define your future. The calling forward is stronger than the pull backward, but only if you stop feeding the past your attention. What you focus on grows. If you focus on what you left, regret grows. If you focus on where you're going, courage grows. Let the past be a reference, not a residence. Let memories inform you, not imprison you. Let lessons remain, but let attachments go. Because every time you resist the call of the old season, you strengthen your commitment to the new one. And one day, what once called you back won't have your number anymore, not because it disappeared, but because you moved beyond its reach. Forward is where growth lives. Forward is where clarity forms. Forward is where God is leading you. And the moment you stop looking back, you realize you were never meant to return. There is something powerful about packing a bag. It is a silent statement. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to explain it. The moment you start packing, you are saying, I believe something ahead of me is real. Packing is not travel yet. It's belief preparing itself for movement. In daily life, people only pack when they expect change. You don't pack for something you think won't happen. You don't prepare for a journey you doubt. Packing. G is hope with hands. It's faith taking form. Even before the door opens, even before the ticket is confirmed, packing says, I'm expecting this to happen. Think about how people act before something important. A student lays out clothes the night before an interview. A family prepares a room before a child is born. A worker organizes documents before the first day at a new job. None of those actions create the event, but they honor the belief that the event is coming. Packing doesn't cause the future, it agrees with it. Many people say they believe God, but their actions say they're unsure. They pray for change, but live like tomorrow will look exactly like today. Packing is different. Packing is saying, I don't know all the details, but I trust enough to prepare. That kind of belief moves heaven and earth, not because it's loud, but because it's sincere. In everyday life, restaurants don't wait for customers to arrive before turning on the lights and preparing food. Preparation comes first. Expectation precedes arrival. If they waited until people showed up, nothing would be ready. The same is true in life. When you prepare before you see results, you are aligning yourself with what's coming. Packing is not pretending. It's positioning. It's saying, I'm making room. And making room is essential. You cannot receive something new while fully occupied by the old. You can't add fresh opportunity into a life packed with doubt, fear, and yesterday's disappointments. Packing is selective. It forces you to choose what matters. Some people miss their moment not because they weren't chosen, but because they weren't prepared. Opportunity knocks quietly. When it arrives, it doesn't wait for you to rearrange your life. Packing ahead of time is how you say, I'm ready when the door opens. Think about daily opportunities. When a phone rings with a job offer, readiness matters. If your resume isn't prepared, if your skills aren't sharpened, if your mindset isn't open, you hesitate. Preparation creates confidence. Packing builds readiness before pressure arrives. Packing also reveals belief to yourself. When you start preparing, something shifts internally. Doubt weakens. Fear loses its grip. Action reinforces belief. The moment you begin to pack emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you stop arguing with possibility and start cooperating with it. Some people wait for permission to believe. They wait for confirmation, applause, or approval. But packing is private. It's done when no one is watching. It's not for validation. It's for alignment. Packing says, even if no one else sees it yet, I do. In life, people who succeed don't always know more. They prepare more. They show up early. They practice before the spotlight. They organize before the opportunity. Packing is discipline fueled by expectation. Packing is also courage. It means you accept that change is coming and you're willing to participate in it. You stop clinging to what's familiar. You stop romanticizing the past. You begin honoring the future with your actions. Think about someone preparing to move into a new home. They don't wait until the keys are in hand to start imagining the space. They measure rooms. They decide what furniture stays and what goes. Packing forces decisions. It clarifies priorities. It reveals what you truly value. In the same way, when you pack for your next season, you begin to see what no longer fits. Old fears, old excuses, old limits. Packing isn't just about what you take, it's about what you leave behind. And that choice is powerful. Packing says, I trust that the journey is worth the effort. It says, I believe what's ahead deserves preparation. It says, I'm not standing still anymore. Some people wait for certainty before they prepare, but preparation itself creates certainty. The more you align your life with where you're going, the more real it becomes. Faith grows legs when preparation begins. You don't pack because everything is guaranteed. You pack because you believe movement is possible. And belief, when acted upon, attracts momentum. Packing is hope in motion. Packing is belief with discipline. Packing is expectation dressed as action. So even if you don't know exactly when or how, start packing anyway. Prepare your mindset. Clear your schedule. Sharpen your skills. Open your heart. Make space. Because when the moment arrives, and it will, you won't panic, you won't scramble, you won't hesitate, you'll simply stand. D-up, pick up your bag and move forward because you believed enough to prepare long before you arrived. One of the greatest truths about following God's call is that movement demands courage, and courage often arrives disguised as uncertainty. Most people wait for the perfect conditions before they act. They want a clear path, a complete map, and a guarantee that nothing will go wrong. But life rarely, if ever, works that way. The call to move forward doesn't come with a comfort zone. It comes with a push. It comes with tension. It comes with a voice that says, step out, even if you're afraid. Think about daily life. When a child learns to walk, they don't start with confidence. They wobble, they fall, their legs shake under the weight of what they're about to become. The parents don't stop encouraging them because the child isn't steady. They keep pushing, guiding, and cheering. Courage is not born from comfort. It's born from stepping anyway, knowing there is support even when balance is uncertain. God works the same way in our lives. Many people delay progress because they mistake fear for a sign to stop. They feel the nervousness in their stomach, the tension in their chest, and they assume something is wrong. But fear is often a signal that you are on the edge of growth. The most important doors in life don't open while you're comfortable. They open when you take a step despite the doubt, the anxiety, and the what-ifs. Think about someone starting a new career. Hey, leave a job they've known for years, and the first week at the new company is overwhelming. Emails pile up, procedures confuse them. People seem intimidating. Their instinct is to retreat, to go back to the familiar. But courage shows up not when fear disappears, but when they show up consistently anyway. Day by day, step by step, confidence grows, clarity sharpens, and the environment becomes theirs to master. Courage is often quiet. It doesn't roar. It whispers, I will take the next step. That next step might be small. Sending an email, making a phone call, applying for a program. But it signals to the universe and to God that you are ready to participate in what's coming. Courage is action rooted in belief, even before the path is fully revealed. In everyday life, athletes don't win medals sitting on the bench. Musicians don't get applause without performing in front of a crowd. Entrepreneurs don't succeed without risking failure. Action always comes before reward. Courage is the bridge between vision and reality. Without it, dreams stay dreams and opportunities pass by. Some people hesitate because they fear judgment. They imagine all the ways things could go wrong, the ridicule, the failure, the criticism. But consider this, every successful person has faced those same fears. They stood in front of a crowd, signed that contract, sent that message, or made that move, even while imagining worst-case scenarios. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is moving despite it. Even in relationships, courage is necessary. Choosing to have a difficult conversation, setting boundaries, or leaving toxic dynamics behind requires bravery. It's uncomfortable because the familiar has a pull, but the future requires you to act, even when your heart is uncertain. Every meaningful change in life, emotional, professional, or spiritual, requires this type of courage. Think about someone traveling to a new city. They don't know the streets. They don't know the people. They might even feel lost at first, but they walk anyway. They ask questions. They take one step after another. That willingness to move without full certainty is exactly how God moves his people. When you respond to the call despite uncertainty, God aligns resources, guidance, and opportunities